Does anyone remember the early 1950s where it was okay to be as racist as you wanted to black people? No, seriously, you could do anything you wanted to a black people, and that was just the cultural norm. Nobody would really do anything to you. You could straight up murder them, and nobody would do nothing because, hey, blacks were inferior. So why go and care? But here's a question I have to ask. Out of all these racist people doing this stuff, how many of these people were a part of it just so they could go and attack someone without repercussions? And the reason I bring this up is because if you have a group of people that's designated as the outside group, well, okay now, doesn't that kind of tip you off that you can do whatever you want to them and not have to worry about it? And as long as everyone's against these group of people, then if you're a sadistic individual and you just really, really want to go and to be as intentionally cruel as you can and not have to face the repercussions for your actions, well, it makes sense that, yeah, you'd go and side with the racist because, hey, why not? Well, the thing of it is, I really believe that's what most social justice warriors are. They really don't believe the cause they're championing, okay? They really don't believe in it, and it's more like everyone's saying, well, this is the right thing to do, so they're like, yeah, sure, we get to go and back this, and what happens? Well, the straight white male is the outside group now, so you can say whatever fucked up shit you want to him. You can even go and say, you're a white straight male! As a valid defense in shutting someone up. No, seriously. Go and look at the video. Those were the exact words that someone used when arguing with someone else. And the entire idea is, yeah, being born white, straight, and male, yeah, you got 3 strikes right from the start. You were born wrong. And I'm just like, well, okay, here's the question I have to ask. If there wasn't such widespread support for hating white straight males, what would happen? No, stop and think about it. Take any of these people. Now, place them in a circumstance where that's not going to be allowed. What's going to happen? Oh, that's right! They're going to go and get their lights punched out! It doesn't take a lot of sense that if you're going to attack someone, an individual of a group, that you need backing in order to do it. It's kind of like how there was this guy who was this, pickup artist, and he went to Canada and people harassed him and everything else, told him to get out of their country, and they just followed him around and gave him a hard time. And it's like, look, I don't support what the guy's doing, but I do believe he has a right to say what he wants to say to those who want to hear it. That's called freedom of speech. And if you go and say, well, I support freedom of speech, but, okay, then you don't support it. Freedom of speech means hearing the stuff you personally do not want to hear. And because you're going to hear stuff you don't want to hear, that's actually a good thing, because that means when you say something that someone doesn't want to hear, they can't turn around and censor you. After all, as I've said before, it's sort of like if someone went and started to go and say, well, blacks are inferior and women are too, and we should just kill the gays, and, well, okay, if you got rid of freedom of speech, now technically you go and say, well, that's hate speech. Well, okay, but stick with me for a minute. Now, just suppose, that was a cultural norm, okay? Suppose everyone just really regressed back to an earlier state of civilization, and that was the cultural norm. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Well, you can say that stuff all you like, and are you going to get a round of applause? Because everyone thinks like you. It's wrong, but no one really cares. To them, what's wrong is right, and what's right is wrong. So, by that logic, okay, you can go ahead and say what you wish, because there are going to be no repercussions for your actions. And because the social justice warriors believe, well, free speech is terrible and we should get rid of it because, well, okay. So if society starts saying what's the opposite of what's said today, then by the SJW's own logic, that means that the SJW should shut up and they should get on the bandwagon of hating, basically, black lesbians. Yeah, if you're born a black lesbian in that culture, you got 3 strikes against you and you deserve to die. Why? Because they were born wrong. Same argument here. But here's the point I'm getting at. When we go and say, well, I believe in freedom of speech, but not for these people. I believe everyone should be treated the same, but not for these people. I believe that we are all worthy of respect, but not for these people. Okay, well, the minute you start saying stuff like that, then how are you not just another bigot? And like I said, it doesn't have to be race, or someone saying something terrible. I mean, going out on a limb here, and I'm sticking my neck out a little bit saying this, but I've actually heard stories related to around convicted pedophiles, and what happened is the people who were doing these horrible things to pedophiles were doing it because they knew no one would care. I mean, they're a pedophile. They're fair game. If you kill them, what's it matter? And so you have these sick individuals preying on people that nobody's going to care for. And people can say, well, okay, why would you go and care for a pedophile anyway? Isn't that actually a good thing? I mean, what are you, pro-pedophile or something? And the answer is no, of course I'm not. But then again, 2 wrongs don't make a right here. Just because someone is doing something wrong doesn't mean they should be attacked, assaulted, and whatever else. And you go and say, well, they deserve it. Well, okay, here's the thing of it. If you're going to go with, well, people can't help who they're attracted to, okay? Keep that in mind. And that's the argument we use for why homosexuality is okay. Therefore, by the same logic, that means if someone's a pedophile, they can't help it because they're predisposed to be interested in little kids. And people can say, well, that's wrong. And yeah, no. We've been through this with homosexuals. The point is that the minute you start saying, well, this is wrong, well, how is that any different from me saying, well, homosexual got beaten up the other night? And that's a good thing because he's a homosexual. So why should I go and care about what happens to a homosexual? They deserve it, as far as I'm concerned, because I am against homosexuals. And nowadays you can say, well, that's wrong, and yeah, I know. But not too long ago, that was the norm. So here it is, you're going to sit and tell me, well, what's right and what's wrong, and what's right and what's wrong tends to go and vary from generation to generation. So if we go and do that and all, and we go and say, oh, attacking these people is okay because of whatever messed up reason, well, okay then. If we're going to use that as an excuse, then how in the world can you go and say that the people doing this are not just messed up in the head? Because I really do not care what you go and think of any group of people. For example, yes, I'll agree, we're currently at war with the Muslims, and I'm a little bit wary of the Muslims. However, I do not hate all Muslims because not all Muslims are the people we're fighting. I know this and I understand it. But when it comes to stuff like Islam, which is an ideology telling you there's very little between a lollipop dropped on the floor and a woman, this is what kids, young men, are actually taught in these schools that are pro-Islam. I am not making this up. Look this stuff up yourself if you don't believe me. But the point is, just because we're at war with the Muslims does not automatically mean I hate every last Muslim. That would be wrong because not all Muslims are going to be like the people we are fighting. So despite the fact that the Muslims are going to be the current outgroup, that does not mean that it should be okay to just hate on them. Now you can sit and say, well, that's just your opinion. But here's the thing of it. just because you don't support it or anyone else is going to go and support the Muslims and all being in this country, that still does not make it right to hate on all Muslims. And the thing of it is, in retrospect, when we look back on it, we sit and say, well, how could those people be so discriminatory? How could those people have been so racist or so sexist or so closed-minded? How could they go and actually beat up on another group of people that were messed up? We have done this with race, gender, and sexual orientation already. And yet, and we want to know how this could happen. And yet, we say this out of one side of our mouth, and then out of the other side of the mouth, we're saying, okay, now it's okay for us to do the exact same thing that we were against because reasons. Seriously, does any of this make sense to anyone? Because it sure as hell don't make any sense to me. The point is, when it comes down to it, the people who are pressing for this stuff, yeah, some of those people generally believe in it. But you gotta realize that even if they generally believe in it, there's still another group of people that's out there that just wants to hurt people. That's all they want to do. They don't care about the movement. They care about inflicting pain and suffering on another human being. And frankly, I don't care where you come from. If that is your mindset, you're one sick individual and you really need to be locked up, not only for society's betterment, but also for your own when word of what you're doing gets out. Because, think for a moment, the only reason these people's actions are being excused is because they're attacking the quote-unquote right people. So if they were attacking blacks, women, homosexuals, if they were attacking them instead, no one would go and tolerate it. They'd be like, get this deranged criminal out of here, lock him up. He's a menace to society and to himself. Now, would that not be what's happening? And here's the thing of it. What a lot of people don't understand is that society is only as good as we treat the least of its members. The quality of character that a person has, you do not judge it by how they treat their equals. You judge it by how they treat their inferiors. If a person is meeting someone that's of a lower standard than they are, and they think that they have every right to walk over them, okay, they're probably not a very good person. And that's kind of the entire point of what I'm getting at. We need to go and realize just because you're against someone for whatever reason does not mean you should be allowing what is basically hate crime to happen to them. If you're going to sit and say, well, racism, sexism, and sexual discrimination is all wrong, that we shouldn't be doing this, then how can you sit and say that racism and sexism and sexual discrimination is A-okay when we're dealing with the other side of the equation? Put in fewer words, I'm basically talking about the golden rule. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. If you're going to go and treat me with hatred and everything else, then therefore, how should I be treating you? Wouldn't it be easier to work together instead of being divided apart? This really isn't that hard to figure out. Let's go and end the hate and actually treat each other like human beings. If we can do that, a lot more can get done. Hell, I might even be an SJW if an SJW meant someone who generally wanted people to be treated equally. But in its current incarnation, it don't. Because they need someone for the fallout and there's just too much abuse going on. We need to start ending the mindset that because these people are different, they should be treated horribly for it.